yes, I did get a haircut. Thank you for noticing. Try not to stare. The Animist Playtest is here. We have a brand new spellcaster, and it is a little overwhelming, I'm not gonna lie, but we'll get to that. This is in my usual deep dive format, so settle in, get yourself a coffee, leave a like on the video, maybe leave a comment while you're down there, and subscribe, because this is going to be a lot. So, we have a new wisdom-based caster, 8+ con mod hit points per level, starting trained in perception, fortitude, reflex, and will. Trained in nature and religion, and only 2 plus intelligence modifier in skill proficiencies. As usual with these deep dives, these are going to be most of my first impressions on the class, so maybe they'll get more skills further in. In fact, I'm pretty sure they do, and we'll get to that. But starting off, that is very, very few skills. If you don't put a single point into intelligence, that is only 4 skill proficiencies. But like I said, I think they can cheat a few proficiencies going forward. Only simple weapons, but they can wear medium armor, which for most casters is not usually a possibility. This will really help you get around that issue that a lot of casters face, which is not wanting to put points in dexterity. You know, as a caster, you already want to bump up your primary ability score, maybe put some points in charisma if you want to be functional in roleplay in a charisma-based situation, and maybe even some constitution for hit points. But with medium armor, you can get away with a 12 in dexterity and be relatively okay. Trained in spell attack rolls, spell DC, and Animist class DC. I just noticed something. Hold on. Yeah, okay, I'm not crazy. Before the remaster, classes like the Cleric would say trained in divine spell attacks. The Animist, unless this is a typo, just says trained in spell attack rolls. I don't know if that's gonna mean something else. Like if you take a wizard archetype as an Animist, does your proficiency in attack rolls scale your archetype as well? That doesn't sound right. It might be a typo, but maybe it's a remaster change I'm not familiar with. Just thought I'd point that out. So, let's get right into the class features and what the Animist is all about. Their apparition attunement. Basically, during your daily preparations, you pick any 2 apparitions, and each of these apparitions gives you a few different boons. Whichever 2 you attune to during the day will give you unique lore skill proficiencies, like we were talking about before. They sort of cheat some specific skill proficiencies in. They also grant you access to specific spells you can use using your apparition spellcasting spell slots, which are different from your prepared spellcasting spell slots. We will get to this. Also, once you've attuned the 2 apparitions, you need to pick one of them to be your primary apparition, and the other one is basically your secondary, though that doesn't do anything. Whichever one you pick to be your primary apparition comes with 2 additional benefits. The first is a unique focus spell you can cast that day based on that apparition, which means the Animist has fluctuating focus spells depending on their current primary apparition. So if you attune to the Custodian of Groves and Gardens and make that your primary apparition, then for that day, you can cast the Garden of Healing focus spell, which is absolutely insane, but we'll get to that. But the next day, if you choose to make the Steward of Stone and Fire your primary apparition, you can no longer cast Garden of Healing, but you can cast Earth's Bile. Additionally, you can swap your primary apparition each time you refocus. So if the 2 apparitions I attuned to that day were the Custodian and the Steward, and I made the Custodian my primary apparition at the start of the day, and I cast Garden of Healing and then spend 10 minutes to refocus, while refocusing, I can also change my primary apparition to the Steward of Stone and Fire in the middle of the day, rather than waiting for my next daily preparations. I hope that makes sense. Your primary apparition does come with one more benefit, which only takes effect at higher levels, and that is that apparition's avatar, which we'll talk about later. But basically, each apparition has an avatar which grants unique abilities, but you can only access that if that is your current primary apparition. Typically, these apparitions will be with you throughout the entire day, but there are some abilities that the Animist can use which will cause them to temporarily disperse. If your apparition is currently dispersed for any reason, whether it be one of your abilities or the GM pulling some sneaky stuff, you lose any and all benefits of that apparition until it comes back to you. Luckily though, if you disperse your primary apparition, then your secondary apparition automatically becomes your primary apparition, giving you access to its focus spell and avatar. I hope that all made sense. So, like I said, the Animist has two different sets of spell slots. They have prepared divine spell slots. These work just like a cleric. You have access to the entire divine spell list. You can prepare whatever spells you want into those spell slots. And they also have spontaneous apparition spell slots, meaning you can cast any of the spells provided by your currently attuned apparitions. You can cast two of the same spell, you can cast one of each spell, you can mix and match them just like a divine bloodline sorcerer. But keep in mind, your apparition spell slots cannot be used to cast prepared spells, and your prepared spell slots cannot be used to cast your apparition spells. You will be required to keep track of how many of each type of spell slot you currently have. Someone in the comments on my last video made a really good point that this is similar to something like a wizard with the sorcerer archetype. You can't cast one thing's spells with the other thing's spell slots. So here's something interesting that I actually missed the first time I skimmed this class. Similar to a wizard or a cleric, in order to cast a heightened heal spell, you will need to prepare it in a heightened heal spell slot. But every single apparition spell is considered a signature spell. If you're not sure what this means, typically a spontaneous caster has to select a few specific spells to be signature, meaning they can be heightened to any level available to the caster at will. The Animist's apparition spells are all signature spells, meaning no matter what spell you get from your apparition, it can be heightened to any available apparition spell slot you have access to. That's really cool. That means the Animist is going to get a ton of signature spells. I think basically 2 per level. And of course, like I said, they have focus points to cast their vessel spells, and the Animist is one of those cool kid classes who gets to start with 2 focus points instead of 1. I guess I'll correct it here because I don't know where else I'll ever correct it going forward, but way back in my remaster preview video, I mentioned that, oh, there's no limit to focus points. There is. It was a typo, or rather just missing text in the preview. The limit of focus points is still 3, so even classes like the Animist who start with 2 at level 1 can never go beyond 3. Also, if you ever want to scare a new player or someone who's really not comfortable with Pathfinder 2e spellcasting, show them this spell slot table. This gives me anxiety. Did you think that was enough information for a level 1 class? Shut up, Animists also get a subclass. Luckily, these are your pretty standard spellcaster subclass. They give you a level 1 feat based on the subclass you choose, as well as a unique action. For example, the Channeler practice gives you the Channeler's Stance feat and the Apparition's Whirl action. Apparition's Whirl is a cool little way to access other focus spells you might need. You know, if you're currently channeling the Steward, but you desperately need the healing of the Custodian, you can activate Apparition's Whirl. Once per round for 1 action, you swap your primary apparition to any other currently attuned apparition. It's not great action economy, but if you absolutely need that focus spell right then and there, this is one of the only ways you can swap it mid-combat. These Animist subclasses actually scale similar to a Cleric Doctrine, where based on your subclass, you're going to get specific upgrades at specific level, known as your Intermediary, Greater, and Ultimate boons. At level 9, the Channeler Animist gets Master Fortitude saves and Auto Crit Succeeds will saves. This almost seems like a typo, because it increases your Fortitude save, but then gives you the Auto Crit Success on a will save. Which, that's usually what comes with Master Proficiency, is Auto Crit Succeeds in that saving throw, so I don't exactly know what this means. At level 13, the channeler's armor proficiency goes up to expert, and at level 17, the first time they enter a specific stance in an encounter, they get their level plus 2 temporary hit points, and I believe the channeler will have access to multiple different stances. So if you've got 3 different stances and you enter each of them once during combat, that's 57 temporary hit points you can play with. Granted, this is level 17, so that might block 1 or 2 hits, but hey, it's something. That's durability on a spellcaster, which is hard to come by. The Sage practice gets the Apparition Sense feat and the Apparition's Possession action. Apparition's Possession is interesting, if not a bit situational. For one action, you allow your apparition to possess your body. You lose access to a lot of actions. You can now only stride, strike, cast an apparition spell, cast a focus spell, or use an action with the apparition trait. You cannot even take the step action while possessed like this. The main benefit this comes from is that you are immune to controlling effects like charm or command. The only way they get around this is if the spell rank is more than double your level, which means once you're like level 5, you're immune to charm and command spells, because spell ranks don't go higher than 10. So it's cool that they have this caveat that, a level 1 Animist isn't immune to a level 20 command spell, but it's also cool that, by level 5 or 6, you're an established Animist, nothing can control you while channeling the spirit directly through you. It's cool. It's situational. It's only going to be helpful against enemies that can actively charm and command you, which is also going to depend on your campaign and your DM, because as a GM, I don't like using those spells. I think they feel bad for the players, hey, skip your next turn. Gosh, isn't that fun? But that's just me. Whoa. Wow, the sun is strong here today. Either that or I'm learning how to channel apparitions strictly by...
Subscribe. Like the video.
At level 9, the Sage's armor proficiency increases to expert, a full 4 levels faster than the channeler, which is pretty cool. At level 13, they get a flat +2 bonus to saving throws against spirit effects and permanent resistance to spirit damage equal to half your level. In addition, your soul can no longer be ripped from your body by any kind of magical effect. Again, super situational, but very flavorful and cool. And the ultimate boon at level 17 is pretty freaking cool. If a haunt, spirit, undead, or otherwise incorporeal creature fails a saving throw against one of your spells, you get +2 armor class against them and their effects for 24 hours. You also get +2 to your saving throws. So if round 1 against a boss, you can just get them to fail a saving throw, you got +2 against that boss for the rest of the fight. The downside is you're still only at expert proficiency in your armor, so I guess this sort of gives you master proficiency in your armor for the rest of that fight against that creature, which as a full spellcaster, that's pretty great. This is the only full spellcaster except I think War Priest, maybe not even War Priest, I can't remember, who gets master proficiency in armor, medium armor to boot. The Sage is going to have really decent armor class. I almost wish they got this sooner. It sucks that this is at level 17, because being able to use your spells to increase your armor class would be such a cool class feature. If you got that at level 5 or something, and maybe it was +1 at level 5 and it increases to +2 at level 17, that'd be cool. I like that idea, it's just a shame that it comes on so late. The Sage can also have 2 primary apparitions, which again would be a really cool game mechanic if you didn't get it at level 17. Also, sorry the bottom of my screen is just gonna glow now. This apparition is not going away and has decided it wants to live here. Class features, Animist feats, skill feats, general feats. Expert Fortitude right at level 3, that's pretty early. Skill increases at level 4, interesting. An even leveled class feature. Is that a typo? Because aside from skill feats and class feats, you never have an even leveled class feature. That's either a typo or maybe it's something in the remaster, I can't tell. But right at level 4, apparently, you can channel a third apparition per day, giving you even more skill proficiencies and access to new focus spells if you make them your primary apparition, and you get a third focus point right then and there. That's cool. 3 focus points right at level 4, especially with the new refocus rules, means the Animist is such a massive spell slinger. Tons of spell slots per day, plus 3 focus points, which you can get back in 30 minutes. Incredible. Ancestry feats, expert spellcasting, expert in perception. At 10th level, again, an even level class feature. This must be something new they're doing with the remaster, I guess, is allowing even level class features, which I guess there's no reason not to. It'll make some of those even levels more exciting, I guess, rather than just seeing skill feat, class feat. You gain an additional apparition spell slot up to 2 levels lower than your highest spell rank. If you're level 10, you can cast 5th level spells, meaning you get an extra +1, 2, and 3rd level spell rank. Why did I say that so weird? You can see it on the spell slot table. It's why at level 10, the +1 suddenly becomes +2. Reflex is expert at level 11. Weapons are expert at level 11. 4th apparition at level 12, meaning you get a 4th apparition. It's not that complicated. Weapon specialization at 13, master spellcasting at 15, legendary spellcasting at 19, which is a really fast jump from master to legendary. And at level 19, you can cast the avatar form of your apparition. Again, a really cool game mechanic that less than 1% of tables are going to get to experience. It works the same as the avatar form, but it uses the statistics located on your apparition's stat block, which, I really hate to say it, this feels really bad. Not just because it comes online so late, but looking at the apparition stat block, if you're looking and to remind what skill you get, what focus spell you get, the fact that the avatar stat block is going to be in front of you the entire campaign, every time you look at your apparitions, sucks. Imagine every time you look at your spell list as a wizard, the 10th level spells are just right there. You know, it goes cantrips, 10th level spells, and then the rest of the spell slots. That feels so bad. Alright, let's go over all of the apparitions the Animist can attune to. I believe all of them are available right at first level. However, I'm not going to be going over what all of the different spells do, and I'm not going to go over the avatar form, just because I want this video to be less than an hour long, and overall, you don't get it till level 19. Why is it level 19, Paizo? But they will be on screen if you want to pause and read them. The Custodian of Groves and Gardens is a pure support apparition. It gives you farming lore and herbalism lore, which I do like that they went for lore skills rather than normal skill proficiencies. Lore skills are a lot more specific, but they can be a lot more useful. You know, if you're going to be on a boat, sure, you could roll survival, I guess, or you could roll sailing lore, which is going to be way more reliable with a lower DC. Comes with all the spells seen here, as well as the Garden of Healing focus spell, which I talked about earlier because it's insane. Now, it's not insane in combat. For one action and sustained up to 1 minute, you and all other living creatures within a 10-foot emanation restore 1d4 hit points per round. In combat, you know, that's 2 hit points per round per character, which is still, you know, if you're hitting 3 people with this, you know, that's 6 hit points per round. That's not nothing. But do you see where this is a problem? And do you see where this is Paizo finally saying, out of combat healing doesn't matter, because everyone can treat wounds. For one action, and over 1 minute, you can heal your entire party for 10d4 at level 1. And this goes up by 10d4 every spell level. At level 3, you're healing your party for 20d4. Level 5, 30d4. At max level, this is healing for 100d4! And sure, it's mostly only useful out of combat, because otherwise it's a very slow heal over the course of a minute. But with the new refocus rules, meaning you can get this back in just 10 minutes, that's insane. There's no point to even worrying about damage in combat that isn't lethal, because you can spend 12 minutes, Garden of Healing for 1 minute, refocus for 10 minutes, Garden of Healing for... No, I mean, Garden of Healing twice in a row. You start with 2 focus spells, 10d4 healing, 10d4 healing if you somehow still need it, refocus twice. Boom. You're good. It's so much. It's a big complaint I have that, honestly, it's been an issue since Pathfinder 2e came out. Treat Wounds itself makes non-lethal damage in combat not that big of a deal. Hell, Treat Wounds makes almost lethal damage in combat not matter because it gets rid of the wounded condition. It's a personal gripe. A lot of people love Pathfinder 2e for this, and it is designed for you to go into every fight at max health. You know, the reason things hit for so much damage, the reason the plus 10, minus 10 crit system works, is because you need to be able to have the hit points to take those hits when the enemies inevitably do it to you. So, I get it. They're really leaning into the max power for every combat encounter. But I guess as someone who likes a little bit of a grittier campaign, not necessarily like dark, gritty, and impossible to survive, but, you know, if you want to heal after a combat, maybe you have to use a heal spell slot. But Treat Wounds, and now especially Garden of Healing, is crazy. Sorry I went on such a long tangent, it's just something I've been meaning to talk about. Imposter in Hidden Places grants you fortune-telling lore, underworld lore, and the listed spells at each level. Now, discomfiting whispers? Is it supposed to be discomforting whispers? Like uncomfortable, discomforting? I've never heard of is discomforting a word? No! That's a real word? Wait! No! You're telling me on my 28 years on this planet, everybody's been saying that's discomfiting? You know, that creepy thing, that liminal space, that's discomfiting to me? I've been saying discomforting for almost 30 years! For one action, sustained up to 1 minute, all enemies within a 5-foot emanation of you, basically otherwise known as adjacent to you, takes disadvantage on their first attack roll against a target. And what's cool about this is it doesn't have to be against you, and they don't have to stay within the emanation. As long as they start their turn in your emanation, their first attack roll that turn takes disadvantage. And yes, I know I'm gonna get a couple angry comments. Disadvantage is in this edition. Pathfinder doesn't have disadvantage, it's a misfortune effect. People know what disadvantage is. Additionally, if this causes them to miss their attack, they take 1d6 void damage, and that damage scales really, really slowly, only every 2 spell ranks, but that's really cool. I like that. And you can sustain this up to a minute. So as long as you're up close to the boss, you're giving your boss disadvantage, and while normally this would be dangerous for a spellcaster, you're giving them disadvantage. So sure, you have way lower armor class than your champion or your fighter, but they're rolling at a severe disadvantage. Combo this with a champion nearby to reduce the damage you might take anyway with their reaction if the enemy manages to hit you? This is such a cool focus spell. I love it. The Stalker and Darkened Boughs. These are starting to sound like horror movies, and I love it. Forest lore, herbalism lore, Darkened Forest form. This is Wild Shape on the Animist. For one action sustained up to 1 minute, you polymorph into Pest form. Then, once this is spell rank 2, you can polymorph into anything under Animal form. Once you're level 9, you can polymorph into anything under the Elemental form. Additionally, you get +1 to all attack rolls while in this form, increasing to +2 at level 5, meaning you can make a really effective Wild Shape Animist, which is kinda neat. Now, the downside is it is sustained, unlike Wild Shape. Wild Shape is just a duration. This one, you need to spend an action every single turn to keep it up. What's kind of cool, though, is every time you spend that action, you can change forms. You're a wolf right now from animal form. Maybe next turn you're a bear. Then the next turn you're a gorilla. Then the next turn you're a tiger. That's a really cool trade-off for being forced to sustain it. I dig that a lot. This is one that benefits a lot from the haste spell. You know, normally haste can only be used to stride or strike, and it still can. But this means you can use one of your normal actions to sustain it, and you still have 3 actions to stride, strike, and do whatever you want. My only question is, do those form spells scale with Darkened Forest form? And you see, the answer is yes, because I read the rest of the spell. You see that? That's character growth. I actually read the rest of it and answered my own question before you got mad in the comments. Aren't you proud of me? Steward of Stone and Fire, Mountain Lore, Volcano Lore, Earth's Bile Focus Spell. This basically allows you to turn the battlefield into a completely unstable erupting geyser field. For one action and sustained up to 1 minute, I'm seeing a trend here, you can target a 10-foot burst within 30 feet of you to deal 1d4 bludgeoning, 1d4 fire, and 1 persistent fire damage on a failed reflex save every single turn. Whenever you sustain it, you do this again, and again, and again. All of these are basic reflex saves, so it does do double damage on a crit fail, and no damage on a crit success. The biggest thing holding this back is the scaling. It's a really nice little reliable attack every turn, but it only goes up in damage every 2 spell ranks. I am actually playing a kineticist with a fairly similar ability that scales way better, and even that sometimes feels like it doesn't do as much damage as I want it to. So 2d4 damage only increasing by 2d4 every 4 character levels, it doesn't feel great. Vanguard of Roaring Waters, Mountain Lore, River Roar, let's talk about the focus spell. River Carving Mountains is okay. For one action, sustained up to 1 minute, you get lesser cover from ranged attacks, translating to a +1 to armor class basically, as well as a 5-foot status bonus to your speed, and once per turn, you can stride your full movement speed. The cool thing is this does work regardless of what movement type you're using. Even if you're flying, you can leave behind a floating stream of water that causes difficult terrain. It's okay. It's hard to recommend because it's sustained, so if you want to use the whole difficult terrain thing, it's 1 action to sustain it, then 1 action to move and leave difficult terrain, and then you only have 1 action left on your turn to attack, or you probably want to cast a spell, but most spells are 2 actions. It's hard to recommend this one. Witness to Ancient Battles, Battlegrounds Lore, Heraldry Lore, and the Embodiment of Battle focus spell. Embodiment of Battle really gives me some flashbacks to the Battle Oracle in a way that I still don't really like it. For 1 action, sustained up to 1 minute, you gain proficiency in martial weapons equal to your proficiency in simple weapons, which still maxes out at expert at like level 9, I think. The upside is you do get a +1 to all weapon and damage rolls. The downside is it's a status bonus, so it doesn't stack with Inspire Courage from a bard. The other massive downside is all of your spellcasting takes a -2 to attack rolls and spell save DCs. Isn't that fun? Luckily at character level 7, this does increase to a +2 to attack and damage rolls, and then it increases to +3 at character level 13, which at level 13, sure, that's pretty good. That's more than a full proficiency bonus, and if you pour all your ability boosts into strength or dexterity, you could actually be more accurate than like a ranger or barbarian of the same level. It's just worse though until then. It's hard to recommend this, which I guess something that's important about these that I haven't mentioned up to this point, and someone's probably already left angrily in the comments, is these are not subclass commitments. It's not like you pick one of these at level 1 and stick with it forever. You can ignore the Witness to Ancient Battles apparition until level 13. You don't have to channel it a single time. And then once you hit level 13 and see this much better version of it, then you can start channeling it. The downside though is you still would need to spec for it. You'd need to put your ability scores in the right place for it. So, I don't know. It's one of those things that if you're starting a campaign at a high level, maybe running Fist of the Ruby Phoenix, this would be really, really good, especially in the middle of that campaign. But sub-level 10, I can't recommend this one. Though, again, something else I haven't talked about with these is the spells that come with them. Even if they have a crummy focus spell for certain level ranges, definitely read and analyze the spells they provide you each day for your normal apparition spell slots, because you don't have to use a focus spell. Remember, you can only use the focus spell if it's your primary apparition. So even if you're level 1, but you really want to be able to cast Runic... What is Runic Weapon? I've never heard of that. That sounds so cool. If you want to cast Runic Weapon, make the Witness to Ancient Battles your secondary apparition, not your primary. You don't need the focus spell, so just use it for the lore and the spells. So normally this is when we would jump into the feats, but unfortunately, This went a lot longer than I expected. I expected a spellcaster to be shorter, but the Animist just has so much going on. My camera battery's down to about 12%, so I can't get through all the feats. Also, I've got a lot more I need to do today if I'm going to get this up tomorrow. So, unfortunately, that's where we're going to end it off. But if you want to, maybe I'll make an Animist feats video a little bit later this week. So, thank you all so much for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think of the Animist. Is it too much? Is it just enough? Are some of the apparitions better than others? I want to hear from you, as always. So, that's all from me. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. A link to the playtest is in the description. And until next time, know now once.